what is heart coherence for people that don't know?
Okay, so I'll tell you what heart incoherence is first, and then I'll tell you what heart coherence is. So if you're living in stress and you're living in survival, and there's a physiological change in your body when you perceive a threat or a danger in your outer world, or you have the perception that something's going to get worse, and that automatic or autonomic system switches on, and there's an arousal that takes place, and there's a rush of adrenaline, and your heart rate starts to increase, and your respiratory rate starts to increase, and blood is sent to the extremities and away from the internal organs, and glucose is being mobilized, and you're getting a lot of energy to run, fight, or hide. But let's just say that you're on a Zoom call, and you're reacting to a coworker in the same way you would fight off a predator. And your heart is beating, but you're not exerting yourself, so the heart starts beating against a closed system. It's like pumping against restricted system.
Your body's not moving.
Right, and so you're not using that energy.
You're not transforming the energy.
Right, you're sitting there, you're stepping on the gas and the brake at the same time.
Ooh.
And the heart's beating against the closed system, and it starts beating very out of order, very erratically, and it starts losing its variability in terms of its beat. And when the heart gets incoherent, if you study any type of waves, when waves are incoherent and they interfere with each other, they cancel each other out. And when waves cancel each other out, energy drops. So energy leaves the heart when you're resentful, when you're impatient, when you're judgmental, when you're frustrated. No doubt about it, your heart's beating differently than when you're grateful, when you're appreciative, when you're kind, when you're caring, when you're loving, when you're inspired. The heart is moving out of survival, and we discovered that the heart is the creative center. And when energy moves into the heart, and you're breathing and you're converting your body out of that fight or flight nervous system, that sympathetic system, if you can convert it into the parasympathetic system, that nervous system of relaxation, the heart can come out. It's no longer living in survival or stress, and energy naturally moves into the heart, and the heart starts beating in this beautiful rhythm, like beating a drum or dropping a pebble after pebble after pebble in the water. And the heart starts to emit an external field, a magnetic field. But what we discovered that was even more exciting was that once energy drops into the heart, the heart, the creative center, resets the baseline for the emotional trauma in the past and tells the brain that the past is over. And that's the moment it sends a very strong signal to the brain, and the brain moves into a very creative state. Frontal lobe and the alpha brain waves are created, and now you're starting to see in images and pictures, the heart's telling the brain it's safe to create. And so getting the heart and the brain synchronized became this fascinating thing, and we discovered the more you relax into your heart, and we teach this, the formula is when you relax into your heart, the more relaxed you get into your heart, the more awake you get in your brain. Because the heart, like taking a big sheet and going like this, it sends a wave of energy to the brain, and the brain moves out of that aroused high beta brainwave state into a more creative state, right? A more alpha state, and you see in pictures and images. So keep relaxing into your heart. We discovered if you can sustain that, the brain moves into these complex patterns of order where waves are on waves are on waves are on waves, that delta is carrying theta, and theta is carrying alpha, and alpha is carrying beta, and beta is carrying high beta, and high beta is carrying gamma, and there's like harmonics of waves, and every single brainwave in the brain is harmonically in resonance. And gamma is super consciousness. So now you're relaxed in your heart, out of survival, out of stress, and the more relaxed into your heart, the more the brain goes into these elegant states of super awareness and super consciousness. So when you're living in stress and you're living in survival, stress for the most part is created when you can't control something, you can't predict something, or you have the perception that something in your life is going to get worse, and this alarm system switches on. And now what we try to do is we try to control and predict and manage everything in our life. So the arousal causes the brain to go into a super alert state. We become materialists, and we narrow our focus, we get over-focused, and we shift our attention from one person to another problem, to another thing, to another place, to another meeting. And every one of those elements in your life is mapped neurologically as a neurological network in the brain. So shift your attention in an aroused state to one person, to another person, to another person, to another problem, to another thing, to another place, like a lightning storm in the clouds. The brain starts firing its compartments and its modules out of order. Measure the brain when it's like that, and it's really incoherent.
It's chaos.
It's chaos. And when the brain's incoherent, we're incoherent, right? When the brain's not working right, we're not working right. When we're in stress, then we become obsessive. When you're in stress, you're over-focusing. You're very narrow-focused, and you're over-focusing on whatever that issue or that problem is, and it's consuming all of your attention, right? So we discovered then, if we could teach people to go from that narrow focus, and because stress causes us to become materialists, if there's a predator behind the rock, you freeze and you narrow your focus on the cause, and you're looking at the material world. You're looking at matter. You're looking at the particle, because in survival, that's where your attention should be, on your body, on your environment, and on time. In other words, if T-Rex is chasing you, you better be thinking about your body. You better be thinking about where you're going to run in your environment, or what object or thing you can hide behind. Right? And you're going to be thinking about how much time it's going to take me to get from here to there, right?
You need to be in the 3D world.
You're immersed in the 3D world, and the senses are heightened because that's where the threat and the danger is. So all of our attention and energy goes in the 3D world, and now we're victims to however the 3D world plays out, right? And so we're matter trying to change matter on some level. When the brain is firing out of order like that, and the more incoherent it gets, the more incoherent or dysregulated the autonomic nervous system gets. And stress is autonomic dysregulation. So the autonomic nervous system controls and coordinates all other systems. So your heart moves out of balance. You can have arrhythmias, tachycardia. Your digestive system is not a time to digest when you're living in stress and survival. So your digestive juices shut down. Your coordination of enzymatic release changes, your sensitivities to things, because your response to the environment is weakening the organism. Blood goes to the hindbrain and away from the forebrain, so you're more reactive. Your immune system dials way down because all the energy is going for the outer world. All the energy is going to the extremities and muscles, so you get tightness and soreness because you're not exerting yourself. It's not a time to procreate. It's not a time to make a baby. All those systems that require long-term projects are shut down. We discovered during this process, if we could teach people to do the exact opposite, to take their attention off of everything physical, off their body, off the people in their life, all the objects and things they own, all the places they need to go, the place they live, the place they sleep, the place they work, the place they're sitting, and if they're not thinking about the predictable future, the familiar past, to literally lose track of space and time and become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time. To literally take off all of your attention off of everything physical and material and go from a narrow focus, focusing on everything physical, everything known, to a broadened focus and an expansive focus, and focus on nothing. And the act of sensing space, for some reason, causes us to stop thinking and analyzing. And if you're not thinking and analyzing, you're slowing your brain waves down. And the act of sensing and not analyzing, and not thinking about your brother or your sister or your spouse or your fiance or your children or your coworkers. You're not thinking about your cell phone, your computer, your car. You're not thinking about where you need to sit, where you need to go. You're not thinking about what's going to happen next or what happened yesterday. There's this elegant moment where when you go from a somebody to a nobody, when you go from a someone to a no one, from something to nothing, from somewhere to nowhere, from sometime to nowhere, that's the moment you become pure consciousness, and that's the eye of the needle. And that's when you're no longer aware of the three-dimensional world because you have no attention on it. That's the moment you become pure consciousness, and that's the eye of the needle.